The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kīlauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS-HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? And it was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed and we knew we were getting to the local community and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Tracker. Today is Thursday, September 4th, 2025. Kīlauea Summit Eruption is still going, having had its 32nd episode just a couple of days ago. So we'll talk about that mostly today, Dane. How have you been? How's your week been? And welcome back, Lou.
Yeah, doing good. Just keeping busy. You know, we have a storm out there. We have the Poiki dredge that's about to start. So we've been running around doing a whole bunch of things, but happy that we were able to catch episode 32 and be with you here today.
Oh, awesome. Did I flash this banner up here already? I don't know if I
There we go. There he is.
That was missing. All right. One thing I forgot, huh? All right. Put it back now. How's it going, Lou? Welcome back.
Thank you. Going well. It's good to be back. Nice little vacation. And seems like we had a lot of action while I was gone. So it'll be an interesting night because I was in the air during all of it. So that was kind of different to watch instead of being here on the ground. And so pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it tonight. And I do want to say before we get going that all donations tonight are going 100% to HVERI. We are now accepted into the YouTube nonprofit 501c program that they offer. So whereas before they were collecting some of that. So all your donations now go 100% to us here at HVERI, and we appreciate all your support, whether you just watch, hit the thumbs up, hang out, or you donate to us here or on our page, hveri.org/donate. That's it. Thank you, Lou. And if anybody has any questions, comments, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll get to those in our Q&A.
Right on, yeah. All right, Lou. So since you've been gone, if anything doesn't make sense, or if I'm talking too fast, it's your job today. Since we don't have our ASL interpreters, you can slow me down and
great.
Just what the heck is going on here?
I will do.
All right. So let's switch ourselves around here and set up our summary. All right. Aloha, everyone. This is our Hawaiian Volcano summary for September 4th, 2025. Following a more typical pause of 10 days, Kīlauea's ongoing summit eruption produced its 32nd episode on Tuesday from about 6:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., 13 and a half hours or so, during which, once again, we had a large inclined fountain from the north vent that fed a big flow onto the main crater floor. This playing on screen is a loop from the V3 camera showing that large inclined fountain, as well as activity from the south vent and intermediate vents, which were also active during episode 32. The highest fountains came from the north vent, around 500 feet or 150 meters high, shooting out a similar distance into the crater at a 45-degree angle. And once again, a higher than usual amount of lava was erupted, about 9 million cubic meters, at a higher rate than usual as well. So we're putting out quite a lot of lava, and there's no sign of the episodic eruption slowing down. We also have views from the V1 camera, shown here from the north, showing the gas pistoning that was the precursor activity to the episode, as well as the large rivers of lava that were fed from the inclined fountain. And a more typical view that visitors to the national park may have gotten from the volcano house from the V2 camera here. We also have wide-angle views from the KW camera, which shows the overnight dribbling of lava before the major fountains begin, and also how lava was wrapping around all sides of the crater, with the main flow being fed in a clockwise direction from the northwest part all the way around to meet the flow that comes from the south and intermediate vents along the southwest part of the crater. From the opposite point of view, at the B1 camera, we can see lava flows wrapping around in a similar clockwise fashion. But on close inspection, you can see parts of the crater floor rising up, being injected from below and oozing out lava as the flow front approaches. We have great views from the satellite of the coverage of lava on the crater floor after episode 32. So once again, we had a drop in tilt accompanying the release of pressure during fountaining. That followed the buildup and inflation prior to episode 32. And since the end of the fountaining, we've had a resumption of inflation as well as tremor and pistoning signals from underground, such that the USGS now indicates another episode is likely no earlier than late next week. So of all the 32 episodes, the pattern has changed a bit over time. But our fountain heights are once again increasing, although nowhere near the height of the ones in previous months, while stabilizing in duration around this 13-hour average or so. This pause following episode 31 was once again closer to our average, following 2 longer pauses the previous 2. And we put out a larger than usual amount of volume at 9 million cubic meters, second only to the early eruption episodes. So our discharge rate is still quite high, similar to recent episodes, despite the low fountains coming out at an inclined rate. Everything is still contained within the crater of Halemaʻumaʻu, within Kīlauea, the main caldera of Kīlauea within Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, where we have updated statistics of maximum thickness of 260 feet and 39 billion gallons of lava, right, piled up thicker near the vent and thinner on the east side of the crater. So there are the final eruption statistics from the USGS for this episode, as well as a quick before and after view from the B1 camera showing the filling of the crater over the last 9 months. From the air, we caught the signal of sulfur dioxide on its first pass above the island, and on a second pass dispersed further to our west, such that today the VOG forecast showing variable winds is blowing just a low-level intermittent emissions of sulfur into nearby communities, as is visible from our Purple Air Citizen Science Monitoring Network here. I'm showing effects sometimes during the day in the volcano area and sometimes in the Kona area. Over the past week, earthquakes have been subdued once again, still active over the Pahala hotspot source, south flank, and more uniquely, following the end of episode 32, a cluster of earthquakes underneath the summit. It's still quite low considering how many earthquakes we're having per week, but we still have expansion of the crater north and south with every episode, while on the rift zone, there's still contraction and no indication of any injection of lava into the areas nearby to people. And that's our Hawaiian Volcano summary for this week. So let's go from there to our hazards, to our gas. Put some stuff back on the screen here. And I'll start off showing you guys the V3 camera. This is just the daytime views of the gas over the last week. Mostly we're having trade winds, but occasionally you can see the camera wide out when the wind directions change and blow the gas right at the camera lens. And other times you see it shooting a little bit more over to the right as well. So dominant trade winds, but there have been some variable winds occasionally blowing gas into nearby areas. Let's look at the K2. This is also for the last week. So trade wind is normal here, but occasionally it does blow back towards the camera. And we're going to see the eruption come through here in this daytime view. See a little bit of bad weather in a couple of days before the eruption, but here comes the eruption. You can see the plume leaning a little bit more to the left in some of those images there. And then riding back to the southwest here. Might be a little easier to see from this further view on Mauna Loa. This is a KP camera up Mauna Loa Road looking to the south. So there's Kīlauea down in there. And you see the bad weather come through, that low-level degassing in between. It does clear up, and then here comes the eruption with a tall plume. Then we get kind of socked in, clears up, but you do see that cloud back once again. This one we rewind it to capture a couple of these frames since it's flying by kind of fast. But for example, there is that pre-eruption degassing, and then there's our main pulse. You can see it. Oops. Let's keep that paused. Rewind it here. You can see that main pulse and then being dispersed off to the southwest, right, by the winds. So pretty cool to see that. As far as the height of the cloud, even though the fountain is still low and inclined, the lava is almost all sticking around the summit area there. That massive outpouring of gas and heat is shooting in the air too. So Here's a view from Mauna Loa zoomed in. Just before sunrise, you see that little puff of gas come up right there. This camera is at just underneath 14,000 feet, 13,700 maybe, somewhere in there. So you can see the gas cloud going up there, likely not exceeding the 20,000 foot average that they are saying is typical nowadays. That's a view from Mauna Loa. We can also pull Mauna Kea, although the light was not great. You can see the eruption cloud is in there, but there's not much contrast in the daytime with the view of this camera. You do see the glow at night there, but just to show it was visible from other areas, even if not documenting that here. So we're back to our low-level inter-episode emissions, and we can continue to look at the VMAP, VOG Measurement and Prediction Project from Manoa, which is putting out all this information about VOG, including the model, discussion, all kinds of links about what to do. So looking just at the forecast model here, we can combine this 1,500 ton per day average emission that we get between episodes with our current weather conditions, and you see the weather dispersing mostly to the southwest towards Ocean View, Pahala, but also occasionally to the north here to the saddle and further over. And we're looking at just the pure SO2 flavor to start. But if we switch it over to the SO4 particulates, which is what you get when you react that stuff and create more sulfate particles, and you can see more of this impact on the Kona side. You see there as well. So when we go to our interactive maps, here we'll start with the state of Hawaii air quality data using all the different sensors. Everything looks to be in the green. There are some higher than usual values there. Ocean View, for example, you can see did creep into the yellow earlier today. Other ways to look at this, we have the Hawaii SO2 index.info here, and it's just showing us colors. Everything's in the green here. So I wonder, let's try out Ocean View or see what we see. We can once again there see there's been times we've come into the yellow there, and even in the green there have been variations increasing and decreasing. Check out closer to the volcano. That one is not showing a whole lot right there. So great to see that. Another way to look at it. Purple air is another way we check this out from our citizen science community. So for that same station up here, it's north of volcano. We do have a sensor, and it's showing a similar pattern, spiking into the yellow here at present. And having done that similarly at other times over the last couple of days here. So that's that one station that is just north of here, but currently the effects are on the Kona side. Let's see, for example, let's go here to South Kona. And you can see climbing values, so some growing impacts. Places like Ocean View or Pahala. Ocean View looks like it's in the green right now, but I can click on it also. And I got them stacked together. Let's try this again. Right, just Ocean View. You can see was actually into the red yesterday. And likewise, we can come here to Pahala for another example and see that also climbed into the red yesterday. Yeah, at 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday. So still having impacts. For the most part, it's a great spectacle and great to see, and we use it as an educational opportunity. But really the impact of this eruption has been the gas and the tephra, and we'll see a little bit more about that coming up as well too. So within a national park, we don't have too much gas impact. Most of the stuff flies up and away. Here are the charts for the last 24 hours. You do see that there was some impact at Kahuku with sulfur dioxide and some particulate matter within the last 24 hours. But otherwise, most of the stations are in a green. And if we turn this to the map view here, you can see the radius and all the green dots showing all across the island, all the different stations with great air for visitors to come and check out the national park areas. So we can continue the last couple of things with SO2 and the volcanic hazards. Here's our windy.com layer of SO2. We've refreshed it with a couple of pulses in the last 2 weeks here, adding to our sulfur in the atmosphere. It's swirling around. That previous trail that was going off towards Asia seems to have been pinched off, and now we're swirling back towards California. And that's how it works out here, apparently. Looking at the mountains project, you can go back the whole last week. This is actually since the last episode. We have these grays, low-level emissions coming from this red triangle, which is where Kīlauea summit is. So kind of dispersing from nearby, depending on the wind direction and when the satellite's flying by to capture it. But really, let's see, there's an interesting one on the 31st. So probably that was the 30th for us, since this is satellite time on the GMT. So on the 30th, you can see there was actually south wind blowing some of the fog towards the north, and actually catches it over Hilo and Hilo Bay, showing the highest concentrations there. But moving it forward back to central and south Hawaii until the big pulse comes on the 2nd, and there you can see that first image capturing it almost vertically above. We're catching almost the entire cloud, which is pretty rare for us to luck into one of those. And not only that, the timing was so ideal that we got a second frame of it here as it's blowing offshore to the west about 24 hours later. Not only that, once again, also see the low-level emissions resuming over here since the episode ended. So that's our hazard summary. And with that, we'll go to some visuals. And we'll start off with some of the USGS releases. They had here on the 29th photo and a video posts, mostly photos, of some observations and monitoring site maintenance. So here on the left, they're actually showing a close-up view of tiny volcanic glass fragments on a leather glove. And so if this looks like you can't figure out what this is, just zoomed way in. This is like a powder, like a black volcanic glass powder, right? A really terrible stuff to breathe. They would cut you all up on the inside. And you can see like this is what's really requiring them to wear special protective equipment beyond just for show, let's say, right? Like, but actually having to cover your eyes and all your limbs and your skin and all your seams of your clothing and your skin and all that to make sure that stuff doesn't get in and irritate, because you have to hike around out there. Remember, the roads are all covered in tens of feet of this stuff in places. So they're walking around. They have these buckets set out to collect the glass particles from each episode. They can then use them for samples, empty them of water and whatever's in there for the next time. That's one of the ways they can keep tracking the chemistry.
Hey, Phil, that's them high dollar measuring instruments they have, them buckets, right?
Yeah, that's the tried and true, right?
Budget cuts.
Yeah.
No, my favorite was when that one bucket got hit. They showed that in one of the previous episodes by one of the hot pieces and just melted through the top and broke the top. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, they used to only use them like the metal pails back in the day.
When they're still using those metal pails down on the floor when they're collecting samples, right? I think we saw those.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but maybe just going for the odds, right? If you're like going to lay out 20 buckets across a half-mile area.
High dollar.
Well, I wonder how well one of those metal buckets would survive out there with prolonged SO2 exposure, right? Because I've talked about those, being downwind from one of these vents being like an inverted sandblaster that just adds as much rust as possible, type of thing. Yeah. And I wonder if that might pollute samples or something like that potentially. I mean, plastic's easier to deal with or something. I don't know.
Could well be, right? And then it might depend on the kind of metal you use and all of that also, right?
Well, we know how long anything we put out that's metal doesn't stand a chance for very long anyway, let alone add in all the extras up there.
I will say this, back in the Pu'o'o days, when I first came to volunteer at USGS, they used to have what they'd call the tear catchers, which were these little metal buckets they'd lower on a rope down over the edge of the crater and hope something shot into it, and then fish them back up, right, every week or so.
That's awesome.
Hopefully some Pele's tears would fall in there from them, like a little bit of
Wow.
spatter here and there, because you couldn't see in there, you couldn't get in there, it was too dangerous. It was usually like socked out with fumes, so you couldn't walk in there into some who knows what unknown danger, right?
That's crazy. That's when we were like in third grade and you played that fishing game behind the wall, right? Right. What's going on up top?
Yeah. Whatever it takes to get the sample, you
Whatever
know,
it
maybe not quite whatever it takes for some of us, but you'll definitely put out a fishing bucket rather than
Right.
walk in there yourself. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I can imagine it must be pretty difficult to walk around out here with all this really fine powdery stuff. We talked about last week how the V1 camera was down. Here they are repairing it back on the 29th. It's since come back up. It was up in time for episode 32. But there they are maintaining it. Views of the crater floor.
While we are on the samples and the tephra, there was something Phil and I did a science night at KO Elementary, with all the elementary school kids, and USGS showed up, and they brought a sample from one of the recent episodes, big piece of tephra. That was the lightest piece. I mean, we have a bunch of tephra around, right? We've touched a lot of tephra, and this was the lightest stuff I've ever seen. Like, it was just air. Like,
how big was it?
Really
pretty big.
How frothy it was.
Was it pretty big? Like,
yeah, big.
Was it really?
Big piece and
That's
weighed
so cool.
absolutely nothing.
Wow.
Sorry, Phil.
No, great. I'm glad you're talking about it. Yeah, it's really, really foamy stuff. Anywhere they walk, that stuff is crushing underfoot and turning into that powder also. And like, imagine that stuff like getting into your socks. It's just terrible. That's why you can try to pull your pants down over your boots, and it's a whole process, right? It's maybe not unlike trying to stay out of like a beekeeper kind of thing, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe not quite keeping your seams, but yeah, not a bad idea. So a couple more things in this photo release here. We have a couple new eruption maps. We do have a thermal map taken on 25th here. They flew over. There wasn't an eruption happening or an episode happening at the time. So it's capturing the flows cooling, which you see a little bit of the shape of where the vents are and then where the flows came. They kind of went around, wrapped around that way, and then had a couple of branches that went off like this, right, from that direction. So something like that. That was our episode 31 capture before the most recent activity. And at the same time, they went and updated this map, showing all the new statistics as well. But one thing that is different, we can look at a little more closely later, is we're now covering just about all of the stuff that's down here from the September 2023 eruption still. So this little corner of the crater is the last thing remaining, and we're getting close to getting it all the way gone, and lava is reaching all the way around from each episode nowadays. So coming back to the map a little bit later, let's continue on the visual observations here. We have a photo release from September 2nd of episode 32. And to start off here on the right, there they are looking at the onset with fountains about 330 feet high, kind of coming towards the camera and feeding this river of lava. It kind of comes towards and off the screen. And behind here, you can't quite see the south vent, but you see these other lava flows that are feeding off from that direction going across the screen there. All right, here's an earlier view. You don't see those back flows quite yet. The north vent activates first, just like the last episode. It was the one with the inclined fountain, just like the last episode. And south vent and intermediate vents activated once again, just like the last episode. So very similar to 32 and 31 were very similar, we'll say. So yeah, here they are. They actually flew over on that same day, so we can expect to have some more maps and updates of statistics, I would imagine, from sometime during this eruption, so maybe it won't be complete to the end. But you can see here some of these views of lava coming around ground level towards the camera, and a little bit more in the air, similar to our B1 views that we see here. A little bit difficult to see in the daytime. It doesn't really stand out quite so red. You just see that hardened crust, but you look a little bit for this change in texture, and you can make out where the flow is if you have a experienced eye here. Their helicopters, a little dot in the middle of the cloud there in front of this gas cloud, which they're surely analyzing as well during the episode. Well-timed episode. And here they are with video documenting activity, laser rangefinders, different lava channels that they could check out or document in different ways. So all of that is captured in this composite video that they released. Play for you guys here. So we won't have any sound, but one of the things about this eruption was it was really quite loud. Maybe it was the ideal wind conditions, quiet winds. But you could hear it from long ways away. You could hear it really loudly from nearby. Everywhere around the summit, you could hear it. And you see these different textures of lava rivers kind of moving around, flowing down. And then you can see here is a lava drags along the edges and it slows down on the edges and moves faster in the middle. You can see that really well in that image. Same thing here. And that part in the middle can carry these little rafts. So this is like a slow ooze coming out from that south vent area. Probably some of that degassed lava. And that looks like perhaps I'm not sure if that's the F1 or something nearby there. And here you see the incline fountain and rivers of lava that is feeding. And in the back, that really white stuff is a silvery other flow from the south vent. But here we are panning along. This is about kind of the western wall, and then wrapping around the northwest. There's a flow going around the crater that way. So yeah, there's some great imagery taken there. There was also this post on X from USGS Volcanoes showing these vortex of tephra dust that were really abundant all around. So let me show you that to you guys a little bit more blown up here. So something about just the angle of the fountain being inclined, the direction of the wind coming across, all the lava landing in areas where it was basically pulverizing and turning into this rock dust. That was then able to track the movement of the winds. You can really see how the winds were making these different vortexes on either side of the fountain there, and just some great views of that. And we'll come to the other camera stuff as well, but I thought I'd share at this point. I was able to go up there myself to overlook and put together just a couple of video clips to share with you guys here. So this is a wider view showing we're kind of focused in there, and I speed it up so you can see the dust cloud at the top of the fountain, and then this cloud of SO2 rich gas coming off the side here. So 3 different zones to hone in on. But really what was really fascinating from this point of view is, since you're not focused on the bottom of the fountain and the flows, you can see the tephra really turning into this powder and this dust, all different sizes. Here's the tripods with cameras. Gives some idea of the size of this stuff. Imagine if you were standing there, how that would look and feel. There's still some vegetation nearby, but up in the air, you can see all this massive heat, and you can look at this material flying around, sometimes in circles, sometimes it's going up, sometimes it's down. It's just all moving with very light on all those thermals. Speaking once again to Dane's recounting of how light that tephra actually is. So the stuff's really blowing around, and when USGS talks about later, they put out one of their messages how this looked like a swarm of angry bees. Here's what they're talking about is just looking at any one spot, keeping the camera still, you see all this tephra dancing and flying around. And this is the stuff that's a real hazard for the eruption, right? This stuff flying around. Fortunately, it's all flying into the crater or into the areas where the scientists are having to take precautions themselves, but most of the rest of us don't have to worry about it. But this is why when it does blow into our parking lots or our neighborhoods, that we have to be really quite careful, and why we track it and talk about it every single week. Yeah. So a little more sped up, a little vortex up on the crater rim from this dust. Everything getting remobilized. The roar was really fantastic. Super loud. You really could kind of feel it in your body. And as far as I could see up in the air or down off to the desert, you saw what looked like this black snow kind of falling everywhere. So really quite a lot of fallout, and something that I was really able to capture and share with you guys there, I hope. But back to our cameras. Here we have our V1. So let me play this here. Let's slow it down to a reasonable speed. We're looking here at September 1st when we're having this pistoning cycles happening in the evening, leading to the first overflow just after midnight on the 2nd. And it stays continuous and leads to the onset of the vigorous fountains. The spray comes from the north vent first towards a fountain feeding these rivers, but you can see here in the background these other channels of lava from the intermediate and south vents that were active there too. So coming to the next day, continuing to degas. Don't see a lot of movement, but if you look closely, there is a little bit, very slow lurching of these last areas of lava flow. So maybe I will put the speed back and play it one more time, faster speed. Just gonna relive the V1 camera for episode 32. So a great view of the north vent. One thing that I like to analyze it before and after is you can look at the outline of where this tephra blanket is, and it's kind of cut here by a lava channel, but it goes in an area like that. And if we rewind this back to the previous day, it doesn't quite line up here. You can see different parts of we'll look at that in the KW camera here a little later, but different parts of it that are covered in tephra. And that's the biggest change we're seeing between eruption here, is this near vent area just building up more and more with flows and tephra piling up this hill. So coming to the V3 camera, reverse angle. Make sure this is in the right speed too. Oh, too fast. So here we are in the afternoon of the 1st. The pistoning is happening. I guess it'd be evening. You can see the glow. You can see the first overflows coming up. And then come morning, we have the onset of the spray fountain. There it is, the inclined fountain arc. And then here we have our south vent and intermediate vents active and growing over the course of that spattering in the later parts of episode 32. So there it was in the slow version. When you speed it up, put it on a loop, and focus explicitly on these two vents right here. Okay, let's let it loop back around, but both intermediate and south vents, you can see the cones actually growing up during that fountaining phase. The south vent starts off as kind of a low bubble, but you still see it spattering and growing. And the intermediate vent grows to be quite tall there by the end. So pretty fascinating. See, I'll let it play one more time. And right there. The S2 camera doesn't move around as much, which is why it's nice sometimes for this kind of thing. But so here we are. Let's put this on loop as well. There's our south vent and intermediate vent, as well as a north vent, which was the initial outburst. And there you can also see the other two spots. And the growth of the cone there over time. Well, let's move it from there. The V2 camera, the view from Volcano House. There is that pistoning the night before, the spray of lava, rivers of lava, and then by night it actually got pretty dark. But there you can see a little bit this apron, this tephra blanket on the one side here after the fact and pull this back. Can't quite see it, but yeah, it's there, quite there as well, but not quite as wide or as tall. And easier to see that here in the KW camera, where we can zoom in there is that area I'm talking about with the tephra blanket after and before. And this will play again later, but so just focusing on this episode, there is our pistoning the night before. Here come our first overflows. You see there's nothing else anywhere in the crater floor, completely dark. There's no ooze ups or anything like that. And here come our first overflows just after midnight, daybreak, and then our fountain. There's our flows wrapping around. There's our south vent flows coming. They meet right in there. And by the end of the evening, it looks like a big lay of lava flows surrounding the center part of the crater. That's the KW. And similar view, but not quite as wide, is our thermal. The F1 camera catches that same pattern, a little more contrast on the heat, but you don't get the full field of view.
Hey, Phil, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Back on the, I think it was on the V1 cam when it was overflowing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that cam. Was it flowing back in to the ground? Because I don't think it was spreading across the floor. I'm not sure if it was that V1 or the V2. Was V2 zoomed in at all?
It might have been the V3. This one
V3?
maybe on the early parts. Let's just zoomed in again. Maybe right in here. No, because it is going
it was from the other angle.
Maybe it was the V1 you're talking about. Here to start.
Yeah, I think they zoomed in on the V2 at some point, because that was the one that has the different light on it, where you can actually see the floor. Let's see if they zoomed in. Yep, right here. There we go. So we can see quite a bit. It's a substantial amount of lava coming out, but it's not. Doesn't look like it to me. It doesn't look like it was traveling all across the floor. Like it had to be going down. Was it just my eyes, or?
When North Vent, didn't it have that one spot that really liked to drain back, like consistently?
Yeah, but I thought that was inside the vent, wasn't it? Episode 30.
I mean, it was just outside the vent, I believe. That spot that I was thinking of.
There was a little lava tube.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was pouring into, and yeah, there is some space under there, but I don't know. From here, I do see a little flow.
Mm-hmm. There's a little one, but it seemed like there was a lot of lava coming out right there. But you know how the light is, and
yeah, I remember one of the episodes where it was starting up, and they'd had that hole out in front of the cone, and really, it wasn't until that hole started to get overtopped with the amount of flow coming out where it was like, oh, okay, now it's going. But before then, it was just draining back in and going into a tube or something. Yeah, good eye.
Yeah, for sure. There's another interesting thing that I haven't pointed out yet, but there were other spots. It's hard to pick out in these kind of views, and I don't have a recording of the live stream, but there are other spots where you do see a little bit of kind of bubbling and lava shooting up along the lava channel right through here, right? I think I saw it more easily on the V3 actually. I'm gonna come back to some points, maybe in here. But maybe if I play this right in there, you can see that there's a spot like right in here, for example, because kind of bubbling up. There's actually some back in here. And it's hard to really convince you without actually having it be live and, not a time lapse here. But maybe if you focus like right in there, for example, that spot right there. Let's make it a little easier if I can somehow keep my controller and the thing on the screen at the same time there. Yeah, like if you look right there, that spot right there. You can kind of get the feeling that it does spurt up, that is, kind of bubbling up. And it's not just being a rapids where lava is shooting up and hitting obstruction. It seemed to actually be like spattering, right? And it wasn't the only spot. There are other spots kind of all through here. So I do suspect that there was some cracking still happening or existing here between this entire event complex where lava was trying to ooze out as well. But it was able to come out the north vent and the south vent and this intermediate middle vent. I'm not sure which one I've seen it called both there. But there is some other action happening in here. And, I think it's still possible that with this building pressure, you do get more places lava can leak out, possibly in the next episodes here.
So we're still growing. We're not pulling back at all. We're still growing.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's very similar to the initial parts of the eruption. Where you're able to crack near ground and put the lava out at a pretty high volume over a short time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting how it has changed to that. So we had seen our thermal camera. Let me come back to our B1 camera that's looking from the far side coming across, and this one's interesting. And so here we are the evening before. This is pretty zoomed out, but you can see what you might have seen from one of the overlooks, perhaps, if we're seeing at the beginning of this thing. First flows, first fountain, feeding this flow coming across a crater floor. And all through here, this part is really interesting, how it comes all the way around. And there, right? So we have a little overturning by the next morning, and then the flow stops moving as far as we can tell here. But what I really want to focus in on, and let's see if I can get the right spot here, is when this flow is coming around. Zoom it in right there. Right? Here comes the edge of the flow over the daytime. You can see the ground starting to rise up right here and leak out lava in some spots. I'm going to have to slow it down. Zoom it in, slow it down. Back it up. Even more. All right. So we're going to be looking at this area all through here. And lava flow is coming around right there on top, but it also seems to be putting pressure on lava underneath this crust. You see the crust actually buckle and rise up, and a wave coming away from the flow front start to ooze out lava that then joins the main flow. So here comes the main flow front here. Comes on this side. It's a little slower, but the ground starts to rise right in here. Look, lava is oozing out there. Lava is oozing out there. The ground is rising all through here in the foreground. Lava is oozing out until the flow comes and overruns it. So that was the slow version, and let me go back to the fast.
Would that indicate to you that there's an above ground eruption and a subterranean, like an under the surface eruption happening in parallel almost, because they keep seeping out at like the same time almost? Or what's your...
So I mean, there's lots of lava and lots of different layers, not least of which from the very last episode that came around and put a big flow on this part of the crater floor also, right? And so it's likely that the lava that's in the middle of that flow is still liquid, and you're basically, like rolling, like almost like putting a rolling pin over a sponge or something, right? At some point, you're just going to squeeze some stuff up somewhere.
Right. So that new material is so heavy that it just squeezes it out.
That's one possibility, as well as it being actually injected, right? So I'll show here in a minute the actual clips of it during a week before, and I don't see, we've been doing this for a while. We have seen times when the lava does inject and we see the crust rising between episodes and buckling.
Right.
We're not seeing that now. We're only seeing it move at the same time as the lava is flowing across the crust right nearby it. So I think you can have both things happen, and maybe, that's a little confusing, and you have to untangle which one is which. But the fact that it's so near the lava flow front coming, I would imagine it's either the pressure of the flow is above it, squeezing the thing below, or there is an injection that is happening where lava is going in the tubes below, and it's going at the same rate through that space as it is over the top of the ground, so it's reaching it at about the same time. That might be the two possibilities there, right? But then you have to have a little bit more luck that you don't have obstructions in your underground pathway, or you know what I mean? You don't have to pressurize it anymore. But is that clear? Can you guys see this thing rising?
Yeah, it was a massive area. It wasn't a small area rising. That was half, maybe more than half of that backside was lifting up.
Yeah. Yeah, it lifts up and it rises from here,
right,
in a wave, and it sweeps across this way, away from the right. So I was trying to look at. I don't see it happening. You know, like it's not like it's starting here and wrapping its way all around. I was not seeing that. Maybe it's just the resolution and the angle of the camera. I don't really see it. Well, maybe a little bit,
but nothing like right there in front of us in the foreground.
Yeah.
And like you said, just kind of squeezing it all in that direction.
Right. This is a far end of the crater too, right? So there's nowhere else for it to move to once it gets past here. Now that I mentioned it, there is a little bit of lava rising there as well.
Which that area of the caldera there has been a point of interest since the first episodes of this eruption, when we saw different ooze outs happening back there, the floor inflating, deflating. This has been an interesting part of the caldera. And there's the down drop block working it now, right?
Yeah, so there's this little corner, this last little piece of the crater floor that's not all the way covered. And it's a little bit grayer right in there. And you can see that this flow came, and maybe there's a little bit now, wait till daytime, but maybe it's just this little corner right in there is all that's left of that original down drop block, right? Which means that almost all of, I'm not sure if I can see the cone from, I don't think I do, any of the September 2023 cones on the crater floor that we saw were lifting up before and getting surrounded. I don't see a trace of anything on the crater floor anymore. It's all completely buried with all these recent waves of lava that have swept across to this far eastern side.
So that would be it with the September 2023 cones gone. That pretty much gives us a new slate all the way across, right? There's nothing else exposed.
Yeah. So the only thing you can't quite see here is that there was a spot right in there where there was that 2023 eruption had a crack that went up the crater wall a little bit, right?
Yep.
And so we're getting to there, believe it or not, to where on a crater wall might be all that's left until it keeps filling in that little edge further and further up. Yeah, pretty impressive.
It is.
And a good comparison point of how much it's been filling in, right? We're a little bit like the frog in the boiling pot of water, right? That started off in cold water. It's just been changing by 1 degree every day, and we're like, okay, this is normal. But actually, it's pretty amazing every single episode. All right, so that was our B1, and we'll come back to wrap up this observation segment here. But here was the B1 at noon every day for the last little bit more than a week between episode 31 and 32. So if we were to see any injection or rising in the crater floor, you'd think you would see it here. The only thing that I see looking closely is actually in this area right through here. You see the lava flow actually settling a little bit, just a tiny little bit. But that's most of the movement that you see across, and the effect goes beyond that. It's just that this is most evident in the camera right there, where it's closest to the camera. You can see the most movement. So not a whole lot elsewhere, and certainly no big bulging like we saw during the eruption there, right? And if we compare this just to look at before and after view, you can see areas where clearly there was a flow in place, where there wasn't. It's a little bit hard in the eyes to see there, but some of the areas, like right in here, you can clearly see was wiggled upwards and not covered in lava. This is part of that center of the lay where no lava covered it. And that area you can see got bulged upwards during eruption there. So moving to the KW camera, same exercise every day of between the episodes. And what can we see changing? We were just over here looking in this direction, kind of this way. So now we're looking for opposite direction. And maybe see a little bit of the lava flow settling. We saw on the camera somewhere around here. That's pretty subtle. You can actually see a little bit of this last river of lava. Seems to lurch a little bit there over the course of the week. Seems to still be moving all the way up the channel. And through here, closer to the vent, you see a larger area of settling, sagging, where lava had ponded during episode 31. And closer to the cone, you see also kind of sagging of that near vent area. And it's almost like it's just deflating this whole pile of cinder over here, with lava underneath it. So really no sign of injection between episodes. That's why we leads it to me to believe it's just something more localized or a little different. And here is finally our before and after from our KW camera. So when we want to compare the before and after of this apron of tephra, you can see here what it was like after 31 and after 32, flipping back and forth. The 32 is the one facing more this way, right? That's the 32 we just saw. And so we actually see tephra blanket coming all the way out like that, which is an expansion of what you saw before, right? So now I can draw it all the way, something like that. And clearly it's growing in size, as well as on this side, you can see we've shoved aside some of this tephra to make this big channel of lava that cuts through the middle of it, right through there. When you look near the vent itself, and it's useful to note the vent itself is not getting lifted upwards at all. It's just sitting there. But the flows that it's overflowed and have lapped up on the side are building a ramp. You can see that the actual point where the vent is buried to seems to change a little bit right there. And so you're really building a bigger ramp and incline right here is what's happening with a lot of this material is building this big hill, like a giant lava shield around the vent inside of the crater. So a lot of fascinating changes every single episode. And this one, especially a lot of going all the way around every part of the crater floor. We could be here for a while examining every single change. And you can see a couple of things of how much lava filled in during one episode by where laps in the crater wall in different areas going around. But we'll otherwise leave it at that and just check in for current views of the eruption site. This is a V3 camera. There's a passive degassing. There is our V2. And here is our V1. All right, guys. I'll pass it to you.
All right, don't go yet, Phil.
Yeah.
On the total volume, you probably get to this maybe in the next segment, but is the tephra being counted in the total volume? I know people have been asking quite a bit.
Yeah, so that's a great question. When we look at the map, it's not exactly mapped out on some of those maps, but they easily could be doing it, right? What they're basically doing is coming around and from the helicopter taking all these images from all different angles to build this three-dimensional model of what the ground surface looks like, and that could include inside the crater, but also the crater rim on top.
Mm-hmm.
And, they maybe don't fly off for miles and miles down into the desert, but they might do, that initial 100, 200 yards where it's really building up so they can actually capture that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you could kind of add that to what's happening. All the tephra that's falling into the crater floor, building up inside, is definitely getting scanned. And if it gets covered in lava afterwards, it doesn't matter what's underneath there. That's some thickness of lava that's full volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trickier thing long term is how much air and gas is trapped in the lava, right? Because it can really be quite a lot, and you see how it's sagging and can kind of compact itself, and that's where it can be tricky between episodes to figure out compared to how much came out at first, how much has it sagged down because it degassed, And that's why the scans are really, really nice, because the scan is just kind of taking like a snapshot every moment in time, and it's going to integrate all that happening, right? Like all the settling from before that point, plus the flows that came out since then. All together leads you to here's where we are now. The total volume since we start is all this, right? And there definitely is some error, and that does include the tephra that flies out and flies further away, that they're, maybe just ballparking and not really, measuring every single grain of it.
Makes sense. Right on. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and get into community corner then. There you go.
There we go. All right. Well, let's see what's been happening since I've been gone. Well, everything that was closed when I left is still closed up top. The Welcome Center is still at KMC. Iki Trail switchbacks are still being worked on. Mauna Loa Road is closed. Halemaʻumaʻu Road is closed. And the wasps are still out there. Now, I know everybody loves their fountains for all these episodes, but for me, this goes back to, I don't know, a long time ago. One of my best views is always a just full caldera shot with the glow at night. This came from our Discord from Gina B. She happened to be on a flight the same time I was flying back over and made it up there and caught this. And there's I threw this up there because I loved all the different colors at night. And as a reminder, there are numerous signs along Devastation and Byron Ledge trails to warn visitors to stay on the trail, please. The roundabout and realignment work is, I think, kind of done. I haven't had a chance to drive it, but they put this up on their site, and they said the park entrance and exit is ready for visitors. How ready? Go slow, I recommend. Continue to follow the speed limit and drive with caution during your visit. Look out for updates to traffic while they continue their completion of construction at the park entrance. Last time I went through there a few weeks ago, the exit was 4-wheel high to get through. Just take it easy. There's their Kīlauea Welcome Center up at KMC for all your information. They'll hook you up there. And you just drive all the way through the park. It's not that far. Pass everything, and you will find it on your right-hand side. Parking is behind the new HVO building that they're building. Have you guys been up and seen in the last few weeks where we're at on progress, or heard anything on where we're at?
Yeah, it's pretty far along. It's moving pretty far along. Yeah, I don't have any pictures or anything, right? But
yeah,
I'll have to go take a look, because last time I saw was maybe, I don't know, 2 months ago, and they still hadn't put the windows on, but it looked like they were busy. It was good. All right.
Yeah, park entrance is definitely pretty good. Like the roundabout itself is finished, but some of the turns coming off of there are not quite all the way done, right? So they're kind of
I see. That's what it is.
Slow, right? Yeah, and then coming in and out is great, but like they're still finishing up the curbs on the extra little pullouts, so that all the roadways are fine, but like the curb areas are a little bit still in process as of when I was up there 2 days ago.
It's a tricky roundabout when I was in it. I'm not a roundabout professional. That one seemed like it had a lot of different weight, a lot of arms to go.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at a couple of things. One is like it's a little bit skinnier than I thought it would be, the lane, because there could you could use a little more space, and two, it's a little bit inclined, so that's
I did notice the incline. Wonder, because I get it, you don't think they need it that wide, but we have a lot of buses that go through there, right? A lot of buses. That would be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Bring your own water to the park. Your pets will need it. They do have some water available if anything is open. Most of the time you guys are going up there during an episode, and it could be at night. So just pack your own water. Bottle filling station will be reinstalled at Wake Kahuna once it reopens in the months ahead. Water is available for purchase at Volcano House. Just bring your own. It's always the best. And here's your closures of switchbacks and Halemaʻumaʻu and the Mauna Loa Road. They are working on it, but they are still open. Western switchbacks of the Kīlauea Iki Trail are temporarily closed for repairs Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., but open to hikers all other times. The rest of the trail remains open. Our completion date's coming up, end of the month. We'll see where they're at. They've been moving pretty swift on every other project, so I expect them to wrap that up. Mauna Loa Road is closed, but if you are going up there, it says backcountry hikers with permit will be provided access to the end of Halemaʻumaʻu and Mauna Loa Road. It's a heck of a hike, both of them, whether it's this one here to take you all the way up to the overlook, which is at 6,600 feet, I believe, or Helena Poly, where it's just a hot walk. There is our Helena Poly overlook. And Life on the Edge is the only program that runs on a regular basis. They may have others going on in the park, so I would recommend going into the Kīlauea Welcome Center, ask for Ranger Dean, and he might be able to help you out with what's going on up there. Stewardship at the Summit is going on the 6th. That's this weekend. So volunteer to help remove invasive non-native plants that prevent native plants from growing in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. There's all the gear you need, your hiking shoes and long pants. Bring a hat and rain gear. You never know. We have a storm coming in, so we might be expecting might see a little rain coming. That's Saturday, September 6th, 8:45 to 12:45. And you can meet project leaders Paul and Jane Field at the Kīlauea Visitor Center, not the Welcome Center, the Visitor Center that's being remodeled. So as soon as you get through the gate. And Dane, we haven't talked about going this year. We went last year for the big flower drop. Are we in? Are we out?
I think you got this one all covered.
we had a good time last year. It's a 26.
You got some good footage out of it.
I did.
That went did good on Tracker and stuff like that. I did not.
We did good. We did. 26th annual He Halian Aloha no Liliuokalani Festival. Experience cultural performances, arts, food, family fun, and mass hula, honoring Hawaii's last monarch at scenic Liliuokalani Gardens. It was pretty cool. If you guys have never been there, hula is spread out through the entire garden area. Kids, adults, it's pretty amazing. If you've never seen it, it's a wonderful performance. There are vendors all over the place. They're not joking when they say hundreds of dancers. Parking will fill fast, so get there early. That's Saturday, September 6th at 10 to 3 p.m. And I'm putting this up here early, so make plans for HoloFest 2025 coming up. This isn't until September 20th, but it's there. Oh, thank you for that. I'm going to drop this a few more times, but this is a good one. You can check that out at pohakupelemaka.org and see last year's. They have some video on that. If you're into gathering of the community and educational weaving, planting, cultural sharing, and conservation, that is something to check out. We also have the Hawaii Prep Fair going on in Kona on September 20th. We will be there, just like we were in Pahoa a few weeks ago. You can drop by and check us out. We'll be dropping more information about all the events or all the vendors that are going on there. We didn't do Kona last year, did we, gentlemen? We did.
We did Waimea.
We did Waimea.
Yeah, it started with the Kona or at the prep fairs with Civil Defense. We've been collaborating for this our second year now. We started in Hilo, then we went Waimea, and then the last one was in Pahoa.
Right.
The next one's over in Kona by the old airport.
Yep. By the old airport?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. There you go.
So yeah, we'll have everybody there. And it'll be interesting because we'll just have the storm being done. So I wonder if people are going to have some new questions, stuff like that. Been trying to get some variety for the exhibits coming over. So it's going to be interesting. Definitely check it out if you're on Kona side in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. All right. And if you are not on our email list, we recommend getting on there. We'll notify you when we have an episode happening. And also our newsletter will go out to you. It's hveri.org/subscribe, and take it, Dane.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody that tuned in today, but first I want to thank the Bye Grant program with their continued funding of our volcano education program, as well as our support in our digital resilience, as well as youth development and helping keeping the digital doors open. But would like to thank everybody that tuned in today. The likes, subscription, the shares, all that stuff really does help. You might have noticed that we now have a fundraiser running. It's going to be running from here on out. So all of the donations that were super chats are now coming through a slightly different system. It's going to take us a little bit of time to figure out this new system and some of the kinks in it, so to speak.
You can see me copying and pasting and putting in there, but we'll work through there. Dane, they're all set for it if you want to go through them.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and thank everybody. Go ahead and roll it. So we had a $25 donation from Nate. And we can't do messages now, so we have
we
a
might be able
$10
to.
from Raven. Appreciate that. Longtime supporters here, Norm with a $20 donation. Appreciate it. And Hugh coming through with a $20 donation. That was your anonymous one there, Lou.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not just us needing to figure out the new system. It's a little bit different for everybody. But this way we do keep all of the money that's donated, whereas before Super Chats, the YouTube pocketed a decent percentage of that. So we appreciate everybody. Thanks for your donations. We do still take donations over at HVERI.org/donate if you want to do it that way. Either way works for us now. All right.
And we did get a $20 donation from Valerie over on our platform, and Philip another $20 donation from him as well. So thank you guys very much for using our HVERI.org/donate platform.
Yep. All right. So thank you, and I think we can move on into the next phase. Phil, what do you got left on the docket? Oh, you're muted.
Bill.
Oops, I did it. Yeah, I was trying to save you guys from my coughing fit earlier. And that's what I get there. All right, let me get our presentation back on the screen here. And we're going to talk about the monitoring signals here next. And starting off with our mountains project satellite capture. We showed you guys the SO2 layer earlier, but thought we could once again show you guys the Sentinel-2 image that was taken showing the flows covering in the caldera floor. Some of the reports that we're seeing right now say that only 40% of the caldera floor was covered. This is a false color image, of course. Like it's probably showing all the areas got covered in lava. Maybe they weren't all red at the same time, but they're all hot at the same time, which is how this is detecting that. Looks like I can pick up a little bit of the crystal overturn happening right there. So this probably would be the following morning time, more or less, or so. So it does give us a little bit of ground truth. Looks like a good amount of it was covered. There is a kind of our lay of lava and their center part that was not covered right there in the middle. And for comparison, here's our last episode was also caught. It didn't quite get as clean a shot, but you see a similar kind of view there. And we're looking at why this area on the east part of the crater might be squeezing up lava. Look how much lava we had in episode 31. Episode 32, whoops, episode 32 came right over top of it to push it up, 31 and 32 there. So that's that image, and let me pull it back out here and turn to the INSAR image that we have. That we have a new capture, still too far in. There we go. New capture that came from September 1st for the 5 days prior to that. So this is actually before our episode 32. And what it picks up here is this area of inflation over here. So if you look closely, we have green going to orange, going to pink. So on our scale here, green going to orange, going to pink is this direction towards the radar. So the ground is rising upwards between the two scans. So it's basically bulging underground from right in here. Right, similar to what we saw as a source area in prior scans. The prior scan being the one last week was showing the same bullseye, but that being an area of deflation, having captured a different interval of time. Along with the previous episode 31. So there you see it kind of like an exhale, a deflation, and here you see it inhaling just before it's gonna produce episode 32. That was pretty cool to catch the satellite. Did well both in SO2 and the visuals and the INSAR, all well timed for once. But from there we'll go to our text updates and just note a sequence of what happens here. So back on Monday, September 1st, they do note at that point in time that intermittent spattering became visible in webcam views of the north vent the previous evening after sunset. So August 31st, September 1st, right through there. And so I'll leave at that as that's the earliest update that mentions that low level activity. And then Tuesday at 4:49 a.m., we have a status report put out that notes the intermittent precursory low level activity having begun. So the first overflow at 12:43 to 45 a.m. with other overflows 2:48 a.m., 2:58, 3:12. This must mean 3:33, 3:58, 4:11, and 4:25. All lasting less than 17 minutes there. Each one had a drain back of 1 to 2 meters, 3 to 6 feet, with small fountains of 10 to 15 feet or 3 to 5 meters there. So that was all basically pushing out the degassed magma. And once that heavier cap of lava gets pushed off, then that basically releases, like you're almost shaving off the cork on your champagne bottle. And at some point, there's not enough cork left, and then it can basically just start spraying itself and clear out whatever is left in the way. So they thought at this point, at 4:49 a.m., that it would become continuous in less than 24 hours. And lo and behold, we'll jump ahead from 4:49 a.m. to 7:11 a.m., where they say episode 32 began at 6:35 a.m., not much long after that earlier alert. So at 6:35, they noted north vent dome fountains transition into taller fountains, which since became inclined at 45 degrees northeast, similar to but less inclined than those of episode 31. Fountains were 500 feet or 150 meters high and arcing an equivalent distance into the crater. And they note past parameters there as possibilities of what might be to come. So this was the volcanic activity notice, the van that is accompanied by the VAN, which is the aviation, or the VONA notice for aviation, which says all the same thing. So we'll not bore you with that, but instead jump ahead to there actually was a daily update put out in between all this. So it came out at 10:11 or 10:17 a.m. on Tuesday, noting fountains underway, noting the fountains continuing, the previous cycles leading up to this. They noted that at that point so far, lava flows from the north vent have covered an estimated 40% of the crater floor entirely on its western side. So that makes sense, 40% all on the western side. Note that for later. Right, so that's the daily update there. We'll move on to the evening update. All that's happening on Tuesday the 2nd, where at 8:15 p.m. they announce that at 8:01 p.m. there was the end of fountaining abruptly after a total of 13.4 hours of continuous fountain. North vent stopping a little earlier at 7:49 p.m., with a smaller middle and south vents stopping at about 8:01 p.m., with a few minutes of jetting marking the end of episode 32. So that's something that's not been noted that I haven't seen before, right? So much, but there are a little bit of jetting at the end of 32. Once again, restating the fountain heights. And a note here, I see we might have a question coming up of how fast is or what's the high rate of lava coming out, which is what we have here. And there is the answer is about 200 cubic meters per second or 250 cubic yards per second is what came out roughly from this eruption. So this amounts to their first estimate was 12.5 million cubic yards or 9.6 million cubic meters. They later revised this down to 9.0, so maybe a little bit lower here, but about this for ballpark, 12.5, 9.6, which at the time they note the highest output for a short-lived fountain episode. Right. So this was our VAN marking the end of it. We also have a VONA for aviation marking the end of it as well. And then we have the messages, the notices since then from yesterday, updates from yesterday and today, where they restate these values yesterday. They note flows covered 40 to 50% of the floor within the southern part. And here's where I question this value a little bit. Maybe something just got not updated there. And then coming to today's update, they restate this 40 to 50%. They, for the first time, indicate another episode is likely no earlier than late next week. We don't get this. It's too soon to tell. We basically say it's pretty soon still, but no earlier than late next week. Intermittent degassing, and we have weak low seismicity characteristic of gas pissoning all indicate another episode coming up. So, but besides all these updates, there's also the messages, and so I wanted to just highlight some episode 32 messages. If you're at the USGS page here, you can come down to observatory messages now, or any of these messages, and click view our messages and get this list of this short little episodes or little updates here. So coming back to the beginning of this episode, they notice the spattering visible. They notice the overflows beginning there and there and there. Continuous fountains beginning. The heights. They note current wind shear and convection conditions in the south side of the fountain are perfect for creating rotating tornado-like vortices of volcanic pumice, ash, and dust. These are similar to dust devils seen in the desert. Dust devils, ash devils, pumice devils. I've seen those terms flying around on Tracker as well. And here, the vortices on the south side of the fountain can be seen in a V3 camera. They're carrying volcanic pumice fragments up to 1,000 feet in the air. The pumice looks like swarms of dark, angry bees on the webcam. And note the middle vent became active and south vent shooting up. North vent shuts down. Everything shuts down there. They note at 12.5 million cubic yards of lava, that's enough to fill a hole the size of a football field, 1 mile deep. So I think that little adjustment here at the end probably does not affect that analogy. That's probably still about right. Football field sized hole 1 mile deep of lava. So that's a lot of lava. Just one episode. That was number 32, and no sign of it stopping. Right, that's where we are long term here. So the USGS updated their table, and their updated table, they actually have had various versions of these numbers over the past few days, but now we're at 9, 7.6, and 7.9 for the last three. Pardon me.
Yeah, one thing that I was just thinking of is that how big that is, right? Because the tallest building in the world, mile high, right? A mile high, biggest building in the world is roughly half that, ballparking. So twice as tall as the tallest building in the world is what you're talking about in terms of volume, which is a crazy amount. It's interesting to see it put like that. I kind of like it. It's better than 500 Olympic swimming pools, in my opinion.
Yeah, 538,000 is like, well, I can't count past 10 swimming pools personally.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, interesting. Obviously, these numbers have been moving around a little bit. So I've been going back, and when I show you guys the graphs, I've been trying to go back and update the numbers to what they're correcting to. Even as far back as some of these July ones, moved down from 5.3 to 5.2, and so all those little variations. But at a glance, 9.0 here. And if you scroll back through, you got to go all the way back to the very top of this table to get any numbers that are higher than 9, right? And so this was episode 1, a very initial onset where it's extra gangbusters erupting. And then this one over here was the one that lasted 8.5 days of lava coming out in a row. So hard to kind of compare 8.5 days to 8.5 hours, putting out almost a similar amount of lava there, right? It's really efficient, coming out efficiently now. And yeah, while I'm on this page here, let me reload it, and let's see here if this will reload without crashing me. And so just this afternoon, since I loaded this the first time, put up this little slider here where we have December 20th, and we have August 29th. So you can see the entire down drop block area, right? And maybe I can zoom it in a little more also right here. I was talking about all these cones from September 2023 eruption being gone. So here they are in the foreground, right, all through there, and completely buried. Far side over here. Yeah, pretty impressive how much it's filled in there. All right, so here is our reference map. And let's get this as big as possible here. And so you guys can see the average elevation of lava, 970 meters, maximum thickness, 80 meters, 262 feet, 905 acres, 366 hectares, 38.8, almost 39 billion gallons, 147 million cubic meters. This is before episode 32. And so it's gone up since then another little bit, right? Up to 156. And I'm not sure how many, how many more billions there. But yeah, that's the, from that, we can, from this number as well as some of the other numbers on the table, we can start putting some graphs together and some statistics. So I showed versions of this earlier without comparison. So here on the left is all the relevant stuff for this current eruption. And on the right is the basis for this approach, which is this same kind of information from the Pu'u'u eruption from this 47 episodes of fountaining as well. So this is from that special information compendium 2018-5109 there. And this is from a preliminary data from the USGS. So here are our fountain heights. You see we had this high peak, then we almost reset. And actually since the last three, we've been climbing back up. And we're curious to see how we settle, but clearly we're in a different phase than these very tall fountains of recent time. Of course, the caveat is, right, that if we look at how much lava is coming out, that's nothing to do with how tall the fountain actually is. So it's more about the nozzle, shape of the nozzle, and how that affects things here. So Pu'u'u did not have that same kind of issue. You can see it actually did have areas where it went up and came back down, but nothing quite so analogous as what we have going on here, right? And as we said, mostly just a nozzle. So looking at the duration of the fountains, also important. We are kind of stable here around this 12-hour range right through here, somewhat stabilizing recently. We had some variation earlier. And this might be something that we saw here with Pu'u'u, where it does seem to get more stable towards the end and less variable than the beginning stages. But hard to tell once again exactly how that compares. Easier to compare within our own eruption, all the different episodes, than to something else at this point. But that's the only basis we have. So moving on from that to the length of the pauses, we head back to a 10-day pause, which is pretty much still above our average, but it's close to our recent average, and shorter than the last two, which were extra long. Right? And you can see that it's hard to really compare once again. I'll maybe stop saying that and just move on and just leave it on screen for you to see those who are interested in that. Episode volumes is interesting to me. And here we are going up steadily ever since episode 18 or so. Right, and I pointed out earlier how 9 is the third biggest number apart from these episodes 1 and 3 right here. And so clearly pretty efficient. And yeah, there was a decline at Pu'u'u, which we're not seeing here, and maybe we'll see that eventually, but no sign of it shutting off anytime soon yet. So discharge rates are one of the more important things here. This is just time, days from the onset, how much lava is coming out in volume per second. And here we are at 32. If we correct for the newest number, it comes out just underneath 200 cubic meters per second. But that's pretty similar to 31 and 30 and 29. You can see all the recent ones here as we've gone on time. We haven't dropped how fast the lava is coming out. We've just changed the nozzle shape for how high it's actually shooting out. And so there, once again, that clear increase, this is the important thing. We're still up very, very high, and no sign of it tailing off as might be possible before it all shuts off. No sign of that. And looking at this interesting thing, height versus discharge rate, right? This is basically the mechanics of eruption at the surface. Episode 1, when we had lava breaking out through the first fissure, very low fountains because it was a wide fissure, but very high rate of lava coming out. So our most recent cluster, 29, 30, 31, 32, all these episodes are in a similar field here where they have very high discharge rates, but low fountain rates. Whereas the previous episodes were having both high fountains and high discharge rates. So it's just a change in the shape of the nozzle there, right? Because as we pointed out before, how much lava is coming out is more than before, and it's doing it pretty similar rates there. So longer term, this is interesting. I've showed this plot before. We've had down here in these little yellow bars the volume per episode. And then in both red and blue, we have the total volume for the whole eruption coming up. And the reason there's two lines here is just the red is adding up each individual number, but the blue is when they come and rescan it and have a new map number, which then might correct it back downwards from a settling happening. And so you see that happening here, where the actual corrected map values are a little bit lower than if you just add everything up raw. That kind of shows a range and a possible error that might be involved with this approach. And so this is 2024, 25 here on the left. On the right is Pu'o'o, and here they actually use this to have an average rate of volume coming out, right? So I've been showing this for a while, but it's hard to really compare episode number against this version of time. So let's give you an update right here. And one thing that might be apparent, might look to be the case is if you look just at how many episodes there are, it looks like maybe the rate was slower, or maybe it's gotten faster. Might be something you take from here. And the reason this is not quite accurate is because the episode spacing has changed over time, right? So this is not exactly time constant on the bottom. So if we redo this for time, it looks like this, and it flattens out more, and you can see the rate is more steady over time, right? And we actually can fit a line. I've put in green here, a fit line, similar to what I did here at the pool era. And we actually can have a rate here of 0.513 compared to 0.29. So we actually have lava coming out faster than the pool era, although we haven't done it for nearly as long as they had. They went on for almost 3 years of this. So we'll wait and see. Yeah, so I'll change my bars into this little yellow line at the bottom. There you are. There you have it. We'll maybe show this from now on, this comparison of how we are on pace, basically. Ever since that initial burst of lava got out, cleared the way, it's been pretty steady for most of the last 8 months here of lava leaking out. At just doing it slightly different spacing, periodicity, but in the end, it's the rates long term the same. That's kind of fascinating to see. So those will be our all our volume graphs. Let's cover some of our monitoring data before we wrap it up here. Our laser rangefinder. Let's see if I can. Maybe this will update for me if I can reload it. No, I've had one data point here that something that the laser hit, but it's showing us a really scrunched down version of this data for the last week. We have a typical build up and drop down on a tilt at the summit. Same at the rift zone, ongoing deflation, no change. Earthquakes are really zoomed in, but still around background levels. We did have, it's really interesting if you note here, when we have this deflation event and then we stop right there when the episode ends, right in there. And right at that point in time is when we have this buildup of earthquakes and earthquake counts. If you look on the graph, there they are. This cluster begins right around that same time, maybe slightly before the episode actually ends there. And then we have this cluster coming in afterwards, and it's all underneath a crater. And you can see all these, including this slightly deeper in a yellow zone, all happening within this semi-caldera region right through there. So shifting and something is rumbling down in there, adjusting. I'm not quite sure if that'll mean anything at the surface, but clearly magma is still coming in and filling up and sending it out, and it's all, there's no sign of it really changing. So for the last month, we can compare the laser rangefinder data for the last 3 episodes here. See, that was about a 1 meter increase in elevation, right? The lava flow came across and then kind of was degassing and sagging over the following week, and then came in and jumped up maybe 2 meters and pretty stable. This one, it seemed like either there was a flow that swept across the area and then receded very, very quickly, or there was some portion of the fountain that was getting hit by the laser that was above the ground level, that was lava shooting in the air. And then when that fountain moved out of the way of the laser, then it finally gets a more stable measurement down here around ground level. I'm not quite sure exactly which of those, but in any case, this is a transient signal, and then it stabilizes here. That looks to be about a 1/2 meter. So not as much lava at the exact spot the laser is pointing to for this most recent go around. Looking at the ground tilt, we had a bigger magnitude of deflation, 25 microradians. It's a little bit bigger than the previous one, but in line with some of the other recent ones as well that have been quite large. No slowdown ahead of the onset. Right? We'll see if we have a slowdown and recovery that comes along with it coming up too or not. But earthquake counts per day over the last month, there was that little bump we got following our episode right there. There it is again, with that little gap being during the episode itself, having very little seismicity. There, nothing super alarming or really escalating that much, but you can see it's clustering when there's pressure building underneath. So yeah, here we are, looking at the tilt for the last 3 months, and really for the last 8 months all the way across. You can see that this bottom of level of tilt is the lowest we've gotten the entire eruption this far. But we've been swinging back up these 25 microradians, so we're really still oscillating quite a bit, but we are doing some work and relieving pressure. It's just that the valve coming in is still on, so we're doing work, but then it's being undone from below. We're having to keep doing it just to kind of keep pace here at the surface. So no telling how long this might actually last. And it's really still a question to me of the south flank, and is the south flank going to move and open some other pathways or change the dynamics that way. But no sign of that still. Earthquake counts are still low here.
Ask away.
Nope.
That's the question,
GPS
Phil.
is
Serious
yeah,
one.
Go ahead.
wants me to ask the question, yeah. Why did you turn on right then? Is my question. Right. We're still having this big oscillation during the intervals between episodes here. So it's like an accordion, really contracting a lot and expanding a lot and contracting a lot, still doing that more and more and more, but not on a rift zone where it's just showing the line getting shorter and shorter as the sides contract, coming closer together. So not sure how long it'll last, but it is lasting, and we'll appreciate it for as long as it does, right? New era of relative stability compared to the massive buildups and outbursts of eruptions we've had over the last few years here at the summit. So yeah, that is the monitoring signals. We'll quickly touch base on the earthquakes here. We'll start off with last week of earthquakes colored by depth on the island here. You see you have a lot of these settling events further afield, Kohala, Mauna Kea, all across different depths. We have some shallow events on Mauna Loa, one on the northeast flank here, magnitude 2, and one on the west flank, magnitude 2.6, a little 1-2. But so there are still signs of extra earthquakes on Mauna Loa. Here's a little cluster on Kīlauea itself, and otherwise pretty slow, even in the flank over the last week. So that's still a question to me: is what's the interaction? What's going on with this interaction in the summit and the flank? And where does it stand? How long can the flank stay closed to prevent the rift zone being involved? Right. So no sign of it moving or doing anything crazy there. And our largest earthquakes over the last week, the biggest one was a deep one offshore. Maybe one of these flexure events of settling around the island. And otherwise, we're all on a 2 range. We have one on near Pa'awilo, on Mauna Kea, We have one on Mauna Loa, that 2.6 we just talked about. There's a 2.4 offshore Hawaii. 2.2 is the largest one in the volcano area. And otherwise, we're getting down into the smaller events. They're not really worth pointing out there. So we'll wrap up Kīlauea with that. I do want to touch base on Mauna Loa before we wrap all the way up here. Let me get to the right segment here. And let's put up Mauna Loa. We have a new update from the USGS today for a monthly update. And we are still at normal alert level, code green, noting seismicity rates are approximately constant relative to the last month. Only 90 small magnitude earthquakes detected beneath the summit, all less than magnitude 1 with the exception of one magnitude 2+ event. Right? Minor inflation as it recovers from eruption and magma replenishes the system, so they're not pointing anything out there as being unusual. By the way, while we're here, Hualai, also nothing to report. Haleakala, nothing to report. Mauna Kea, nothing to report. Kameʻohuakanoa, nothing to report. And all the volcanoes and Ufu, Olosega, Ta'u, American Samoa have nothing to report as well. But for Mauna Loa, the reason we're looking a little more closely is if you look in detail here is just the last week of earthquakes on Mauna Loa. We're having not quite a cluster, but they're starting to have more events underneath the summit area, especially. We have this larger event just to the west, the flanks moving. If the flank moves, it can create space inside for more magma buildup. Maybe that's why magma is building up and it needs more space. But we're seeing signals of stretching. And then this whole southeast flank of Mauna Loa can also continually quake like Kilauea's and adjust as well, right? And gets pushed by Kīlauea if Kīlauea swells, but it can also get pushed by Mauna Loa. So this is back and forth and interesting, complicated area here. But so that's the per week version. If I go per month, well, where was it? I go per month, there it is. Then you can see these patterns a little bit more obviously filling out, right? Both in the summit and the southeast flank. And if we look at the GPS, this is distance north and south across Mokuaweoweo caldera over the last year. And if you look here at the most recent week, it looks like it's going pretty steeply upwards. That's not alarming by itself, but it does show that it could be stretching. We'll wait for the corrections of GPS values that come through. But it is worth keeping an eye on there because of that, right? Growing in length, and over the last year, this is upwards. It is also still rising in height, right? And so to put some numbers on this, make this more real, let's look back. It's the beginning of September now to the beginning of August. This would be 1 month time. And the sensor was actually offline, but give me, let's call that, 12.5 centimeters, right? This would be 1.5 centimeters or 1.25 centimeters. This would be 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, right? So somewhere in the 1.25, right in the middle of there. And then up to where we are now, that's 2.25. So you're looking at 1 centimeter of extension in 1 month at Mauna Loa summit, right? That's how much it's actually expanding, to put a number on it. That's gonna be how about a ½ inch or so, right? In 1 month. So it's stretching out, and how fast is it rising? If you do a similar kind of exercise there, we'll call this 2 centimeters, so maybe 3.5 to 5. So maybe 1.5 centimeters has come up as well. And so it's a similar amount that it's rising up and extending just in 1 month. And that's why it's important to look a little more closely at what's happening with all the signals. But long term, if we look at earthquakes per month for the last 5 years, we're still pretty low, right? This was a buildup in the years ahead of the eruption, so got to much more massive values. In the months just ahead of it, it climbed even further. And since then, it really crashed and dropped off quite a bit. First in one phase where it was a little more quakey, then crashing again. And what we're talking about happening now is this latest phase of recovery. If you look since April 2024, there's been a slow climb. And so here we are starting to see some effects of slightly more earthquakes expressing in the maps finally here. So that's the story on Mauna Loa, but to kind of wrap it up there, one last view into the crater from earlier today. Looks quiet, actually quiet, maybe some few little rock falls here and there, but otherwise nothing to worry about there for now. There is one last thing, which is Volcano Watch, and this week it is about Dick Fisk, one of HVO's very best. So to make sure not to skip this, this article was written by Don Swanson himself about his friend and mentor, Dick Fisk, who died this past June before his 93rd birthday. So there is Dick Fisk. Really fascinating attachment to HVO here. He was at HVO only for 3 years, from 65 to 68. But for the rest of his career, continued working in Kīlauea after leaving HVO. Much of that time at the Smithsonian in DC. They came in 1965. He's one of the first ones, along with Don, started studying the Kauai fault system, realizing all the seismicity didn't really match how the size of the eruption they had just had on the East Rift, and he's trying to figure it out. So he basically he along with Don came up with this model of the South Flank and the Kauai connector and the rift zones and the summit and how it all went together that we still use today, right? Back in Maryland, Dick constructed a large physical model made of gelatin to emulate the shield volcanoes of Mauna Loa and Kīlauea, and injected colored water into them to see how the volcanoes deformed. So that's how he came to these ideas, and joked that when his experiments were over, his kids could eat the volcanoes. Should we do this at Science Night, you guys?
I am not baking for you, Phil. Sorry. You don't want me making nothing in the kitchen. That'll be the eruption demo right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jello. Yeah, a little tricky to start. No baking, but yeah.
Start them off on Jello.
Too advanced. So
Somehow
yeah,
I made Jello into elephant toothpaste. I find a way.
We'll get there.
On accident.
It's going to be our explosive blocks that get shut out somehow.
Right.
So yeah, he's involved with lots of publications. He came back in the 80s to reset the leveling lines across the Kauai, led to questions about frequency of faulting, led to the attempts to estimate the recurrence by digging through the faults. By digging in that area, they found deposits of explosive tephra interlayered with the dominant flows. They realized, what the heck's going on here? Why are there explosive deposits on our non-explosive volcano? Now we know Kīlauea is explosive, but it was because of these guys' work, Dick Fisk and later Don Swanson, carrying on the work from Dick that set that entire foundation of knowledge. Here's a nice little quote. His concern with structure and history led him to worry about an overemphasis on here and now of eruptions themselves. Right? He pointed out that HVO is a volcano observatory and not an eruption observatory. And that's similar to us here, right? We're not just, responding during an eruption, but all the times in between to educate with volcano knowledge. And so we're following this exact model that these guys laid out at the USGS-HVO. The history of Don and Dick is long here. They met at Johns Hopkins in 1961. They were working nearby in Rainier. It was Dick Fisk that suggested that Don Swanson apply for a postdoc in Europe, which he got, which led to him being hired by the USGS. It was Dick that left HVO in 68 and had Don Swanson replace him as a staff scientist. It was he who lent the geodimeter for the St. Helens measurements to measure the movement of the north flank as it was bulging outwards there. It was Dick who then invited Don back to the Kauai research on Kīlauea, which led to Don coming back to HVO and becoming the scientist in charge. Again, right? So lots of stuff. Obviously, a very deep appreciation from Don to his colleague Dick Fisk there, and wanted to not just breeze over this here, since in not to in an indirect way, all this work is a foundation for what we're doing here today. Right, a little bit more overlooked in an era of space-based measurements, INSAR and all that, but it was all started off with this guy with a lot of hiking and measuring stuff with tapes and other low-tech gear, shovels and stuff like that, sieves.
The original mules walking around there, right, packing all their gear. Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. We'll wrap it up there, guys. I know we've gone on a little long already, but what have we got for questions and discussion?
A couple questions in there for you. We had a few come through. I don't see one highlighted here. Oh, there it is. So I've seen this a couple times, basically asking for an update on your estimation for the crater filling up.
Yeah, so what's the high flow rate during the episode? Let's show the discharge rates here. So that's a flow rate right there, discharge rate. So high rate would be here in this range of 150 and up, we'll call it, cubic meters per second. These are raw values. So all these things have been high in this recent era. So about the same as when we did a projection recently. And at that point, it was still, I'm not going to go on fine analysis, but very generally about a year. If I can do this for about a year further, we're talking about, let's see, we're 32 and you add 52 weeks, we'll call it, right? If you're at episode 70 or 75 or 80, then we're getting close to talking about the crater filling all the way up, right? So maybe for the last 50, we can revisit this more seriously. Okay, like it's getting close. It hasn't slowed down. There's some variability, but we're still, that would be still, I don't know, 6 months away possibly or more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before it came something like that. So we'll wait and see if we can keep this up. But when we say high rate of flow, this we're talking about this discharge rate and how much lava for over how much time is how you get this number basically. And so it's still high, and that's what really matters, more so than the nozzle. So that's a good question.
All right. Do one more. Looks like we did have a donation from Mark H. Is that right, Lou?
Yeah, over on our donation platform on hveri.org/donate.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for that. Finally, question from Raven asks, are those cones what's causing the breathing, pulsing appearance of the Caldera 4 cones that I think got overtopped?
No, not. I don't believe so. And the reason I say that, Raven, it's a good question. We've seen those cones also get lifted up in the past as well, right? The whole crater floor beneath them get lifted up. Then eventually lava leaked out and surrounded them as well. So it's just kind of this mixed process of the lava actually injecting below and lifting the ground, but also overtopping it and flooding the top from both sides, right? It's really pretty messy when you think about what order things deposit, right? You can't, we teach geology, like Geology 101, this principle of superposition where the things that are on top are younger than things below that. And that just at all does not work in this environment of lava injecting and covering and coming from every direction at different times. Really, really chaotic.
Yep. All right. I think that does it for us in terms of questions. We will be back next Thursday at 5 p.m. I will not be joining. I will be doing some with civil defense. It is going to be an interesting week. I already found out that it's still happening, but it's been moved because of the potential hurricane thing. So interesting, but good luck, you guys, and I will be back as well, but they'll be here next week, Thursday, 5 p.m.
Yeah, mahalo, Dane. Mahalo, Lou. Anything else you going to say, Lou, before we head out?
No, I think we're good.
Keep an eye out for the post about Poiki coming next week. There was a delay. We had a bunch of stuff saved up for today, but with the storm that delayed the project, so we're looking now at next week, a bunch of action.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
The Hawaii Tracker Facebook group, so make sure you're tuned in there.
Thanks, everybody, for donating to us. We are a 501c3 community-based organization, and we are happy to be able to get your donations on our platform as well as here on YouTube now as a fundraiser. That's a big help. You guys have taken us a long way. So look forward to some new stuff coming up, like Dane was saying, with the Pohiki and our post that will be coming out shortly.
All right, thank you guys. So from all of us here at the nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, until next week, for Lou Torre, Dane DuPont, I'm Philip Ong. Aloha, everybody.